How does a young man with no support, no money, and no guidance manage to change his destiny against all odds? Welcome back to Soul Rise Stories. Please do well to subscribe to this channel so that you won't miss any updates from us. We are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. David Kole entered the world quietly, almost unnoticed, on a rainy Tuesday morning in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. The small room where he was born leaked so badly that the midwife had to shift his mother's mat 3 times to avoid the dripping water. His mother, worn and exhausted, looked down at him with a mixture of love and fear. Love because he was hers, fear because she had nothing to offer him except a life filled with struggle. His father was already gone, choosing freedom over responsibility, before David even took his first breath. From the moment he could walk, David understood poverty. He didn't learn it from stories or textbooks. He lived inside it. His childhood was a series of patched clothes, barefoot mornings, and hustling afternoons. By the time he turned 10, he was already doing odd jobs after school, cleaning storefronts, carrying market bags, sweeping compounds, anything that would earn him enough coins to help his mother buy food. He did it without complaint. He did it because he had no choice. School life was not any kinder. While other children arrived with polished shoes and packed lunches, David arrived with dust-covered trousers and an empty stomach. Some teachers dismissed him as a boy destined for failure. Students laughed at his accent, his clothes, and the holes in his shoes. He grew used to the whispers, but not immune to them. Still, he walked into school every morning, determined to hold on to the one thing he believed might someday change his life: education. But determination was not always enough. One afternoon, after he failed a mathematics test, his teacher called him aside, not to guide him, but to discourage him. The man placed a heavy hand on his shoulder and said, "David, maybe academics is not for you. Boys like you should focus on learning a trade. Don't waste your time trying to be what you are not." The words hit him harder than any slap could. They were spoken gently, but they cut deeply. On his way home, he dragged his feet, feeling the world shrink around him. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was reaching too high. He had no mentor, no guidance, no support. He was just a poor boy from a forgotten neighborhood. What right did he have to dream? That night, after carrying buckets of water for their neighbor in exchange for a plate of food, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The rain was leaking again, dripping near his pillow, but he hardly noticed. His mind was replaying the teacher's words. For the first time, he felt the weight of hopelessness pressing down on him. But the next morning, he did something unexpected. He got up and went to school again. And the next day, and the next. His spirit bent, but it did not break. One day, when he was 15, something happened that would change the course of his life. He had gone to the public library, not to read, but to escape the afternoon heat. The guards usually chased boys like him away, but that day the man at the door seemed distracted. David slipped inside and sank into a seat near the window. He planned to nap quietly, but a book on the table beside him caught his eye. The title read, "You Can Change Your Life." He picked it up slowly, almost reverently, as if afraid it might burn him. At first he flipped through the pages carelessly, then he paused. A sentence caught his attention. "Your current situation is not your final destination, unless you choose to stop moving." He read that line again and again. He didn't know it yet, but in that moment something inside him shifted. He spent the next hour reading until the library closed. The next day he came again, and the next. Soon the library became his sanctuary. He devoured books on business, technology, personal development, psychology, leadership, anything he could find. He didn't have a mentor in real life, so he found mentors inside those books. He didn't have a classroom at home, so the library became his classroom. Sometimes he would sit in the corner until the lights flickered, with his stomach growling and his eyes burning, but he read anyway. He read because those books told him something no one else ever had. They told him he could be more. One evening, while attending a free computer skills class in the library, an older man named Mr. Aid noticed how quickly David learned. He watched him through several sessions before pulling him aside. "You have something special," the old man said gently. "You learn faster than most. Don't waste this gift." The words warmed David's heart like sunlight. It was the first time someone had acknowledged his potential. He doubted himself often, but hearing it from someone else stirred something powerful inside him. From that day on, Mr. Aid became the mentor he never had. He taught David coding, website design, and problem solving. He bought him beginner textbooks. Sometimes he gave him food quietly so he wouldn't feel embarrassed. Under his guidance, David discovered a passion for technology. He spent late nights practicing on the library computers, copying codes by hand, because he didn't always have access to a system. He spent months building tiny projects, small websites, simple apps, anything to sharpen his skills. But success did not come quickly. At 19, he began applying for jobs. Most companies never responded. Some rejected him because he had no degree. Others rejected him because he looked poor. Once he volunteered to create a website for a local shop for free. He spent 2 weeks on it, only to be told it wasn't good enough. He walked home under the harsh sun, his heart heavy, his confidence shaking. There were days he wanted to give up. Some nights he cried silently so his mother wouldn't hear. But every time he felt like quitting, a small voice inside him whispered, "If you stop now, all your suffering becomes useless." So he kept going. His first break came unexpectedly. At 22, he entered a small tech competition hosted by an NGO that supported underprivileged youth. He had no laptop, so he worked in the library from morning until closing time, typing quickly before the computers shut down. His idea was simple but powerful, an app that helped small businesses track their sales with ease. He built it with passion, pouring into it everything he had learned in the past few years. To his shock, he won first place. The prize was small, just a brand new laptop and $500, but to David, it felt like he had been handed a new life. He walked home that night with tears in his eyes and hope in his heart. With the prize money, he invested in internet access and online courses. His skills improved rapidly. Soon, people began seeking him out. A bakery needed a website. A pharmacy needed inventory software. A tailor needed a digital catalogue. Tiny job by tiny job, he built his portfolio. At 24, he launched a small digital services business out of his mother's living room. He hired 2 other young men from his neighborhood because he remembered what it felt like to be overlooked. They worked long nights, sometimes until sunrise. But the work was honest, and it paid. Word spread quickly. His business grew. Within a few years, he moved into a small office downtown. By 28, he launched a startup focused on developing affordable digital tools for small and medium-sized businesses. Investors noticed him. Grants began to come in. His application expanded across the country. He became the face of hope for thousands of young people who believed their lives were too broken to fix. But David never forgot where he came from. With part of his earnings, he created a foundation that offered free tech training to youth in poor communities. He bought laptops for schools. He sponsored scholarships for children who were like him, full of potential but lacking opportunity. He visited marketplaces to teach women how to track their sales using simple apps. He became the mentor he once needed. At 31, he returned to the neighborhood where he grew up. The roads were still dusty, the houses still worn, but something felt different. This time, people gathered around him in admiration, not mockery. They called him our pride, our example, our miracle, even his former teacher, the one who told him academics wasn't for him, came to apologize. But David only smiled and said, "Sir, your words pushed me to find myself. If you hadn't doubted me, I might not have worked as hard as I did. So thank you." That night, he stood outside his childhood home and looked at the rusted roof, the cracked walls, the tiny window he had stared through as a boy. And he felt something he hadn't felt in years, a deep sense of peace. His life was no longer defined by where he came from. It was defined by what he did with where he came from. Today, David is known not only as a successful entrepreneur, but as a symbol of resilience. His story spreads across classrooms, youth events, documentaries, and mentorship programs. Whenever he is asked how he made it, he always says the same thing. "I had no money, I had no support, I had no guidance. But I had a choice, and I chose not to give up." He teaches young people that their background is not a sentence, it is a starting point. He teaches them that rejection is not a prophecy, it is fuel. He teaches them that life will not always hand them opportunities, but it will always give them the chance to try. And he reminds them, when life gives you nothing, that is when you have the chance to become something extraordinary. David Kole's life stands as a powerful reminder that greatness grows in unlikely places, that strength rises from struggle, and that destiny is shaped not by circumstances, but by perseverance. Against all odds, a boy who was expected to fail rose not only to succeed, but to inspire thousands. And his journey continues, proving each day that a determined mind can rewrite its own story, even when the world writes a different one.